Good afternoon. Thank you for coming into our workshop, both the workshop before this one as well as my workshop. I want to welcome you on behalf of the Mayor, Rahm Emanuel. I want to welcome you and thank you for attending. I also want to thank you for participating on behalf of our city's Chief Procurement Officer, Commissioner Jamie Rhee. We appreciate your interest in doing business with the City of Chicago. We also appreciate your interest in learning about our process. Hopefully your time spent today will be well spent, and if you have any questions that result from our presentation today, you can reach out to me. What I'm going to do right up front is I want to give you my contact information so that you'll be able to get in touch with me so that I can be in ongoing assistance to you, the vendor community. My name is Terry Glavin, G-L-A-V-I-N. Yes, G-L-A-V-I-N. My direct line at my office is 312-744-0851. And my email is my name, so it's Terrence, T-E-R-R-E-N-C-E .Glavin, that's G-L-A-V-I-N, at cityofchicago.org. I am legal counsel for the City of Chicago Department of Procurement Services, and I am here to help you cover a number of topics that might be of interest to you if you're interested in doing business with the City of Chicago. I'm not going to cover word for word every slide of the presentation, but I am going to reference it every once in a while, so I hope you look at what I have on the PowerPoint, but pay attention to me as well, and hopefully we'll be able to cover quite a bit of material. The topics that we're going to cover today are the mission of the Department of Procurement Services, the laws that govern our city's procurement process, the types of procurement or categories of procurement that we cover, certification, both touching upon what certification is about and how compliance is extremely important in regard to certification, contract monitoring and compliance. We're going to focus also on the duty of vendors to report corrupt or unlawful activities. And finally, we'll get to the Department of Procurement Services website, which is a very helpful resource. I encourage you to go to our department's webpage at cityofchicago.org. And I encourage you, not only if you have a specific question, to look for the answers at our website, but also to periodically just go to our website, look for news, look for updates, look for resources. And over time, it's a great, not only a resource for what you need at the time, but it's a great educational resource for your ongoing needs as a vendor. We are the Department of Procurement Services for the City of Chicago. We are the agency or department responsible for making sure we get basically contracts into place so that we can make purchases for goods and services from vendors out in the community. I mentioned that we are the procurement authority for the City of Chicago because oftentimes the public or vendor community may think that certain purchases that are going on are the City of Chicago when in fact they're not our agency. For example, Chicago Transit Authority conducts its own purchasing. Chicago Park District conducts its own purchasing. There are a number of what we call sister agencies, and they have their own procurement authority. So oftentimes they are, you might see in the newspaper, for example, advertisements for opportunities, and it's important that you pay close attention. Is it being advertised as an opportunity by the sister agency or many sister agencies, or is it an opportunity being advertised by our department? If it's by our department, you'll be working with us on selling to the City of Chicago. There are laws that govern our process, and it's important for you to know the guidelines. We live within the parameters of federal, state, and local law, and we also live within the parameters of our city's policies and procedures. We want the system to have as much integrity as possible. And in order to do so, we follow the process that is given to us, that we're mandated to live by. as we run our procurement and our purchasing. We have partners in our endeavor to comply with the law, and interestingly enough, we have a guest speaker here today. We have a member from the City of Chicago Office of the Inspector General, Rachel Levin, who's here with us today, and she's going to have an opportunity to speak with you as well. And it'll be of very much relation to the section that I'm going to cover, the duty to report corrupt and unlawful acts. Now, I want to point out, it's not critical that you run right out and become a legal expert on purchasing today, but it is important that you get familiar with the rules. And if a project is federally funded, then federal laws may apply. But for the most part, our purchasing process is governed by the Illinois Municipal Purchasing Act, and there's a specific section for cities that have a population over 500,000 people, so we're governed by that statute. And then if you look in the municipal code, City of Chicago has a municipal code section 2-92, and that is the municipal code section that creates our department and lays out sort of the framework for our operation, how we're to put contracts into place. What types of procurement are we involved in? Well, I think the first way you might want to look at it is break down what are we buying. The broad categories are we buy goods and we buy services. Okay? Goods are, for the most part, tangible things, things you can pick up. Obviously, services are human services, sometimes of a highly professional nature or skilled nature that we need to assist us with our mission as a city. Now, who are the actual buyers, or who are the customers, I should say? We have the obligation to put the contracts in place, but the actual customers are all of our user departments throughout the city. And so you would be selling to police department, fire department, Department of Information Technology. And if you go to cityofchicago.org, there's a tab that drops down and you can actually see all the city departments that are potential clients or customers that you can do business with by doing business with the City of Chicago. So those are the customers that buy the goods or services. And depending on what's being bought, goods versus services, or work services versus professional services, it determines what process we're going to use to put a contract in place. So for example, for the most part, if we're buying goods, things that are common by nature, tangible, things that we can pick up or touch, those items we purchase by way of a competitive bid process for the most part. By law, we award those contracts for goods to the lowest responsible bidder, by law. What does that mean? Briefly, it means that we're going to give it to the vendor that bids the lowest price through a competition, through a bidding competition. Not just the lowest price, though, the vendor has to be responsive and responsible. What does that mean? Responsive means that the vendor has read our specifications, read the details of what we want, and is giving it to us basically what we want, the way we want it. Okay? That's being responsive. Responsible is being basically capable of delivering. Whether it's the good or service, you have to be responsible or capable, presently capable to perform the contract that you're competing for. Going back to goods, goods are typically solicited and purchased through two smaller categories, small orders versus regular purchases or large orders. The defining line between those two categories is basically if we're buying in amounts of under $100,000, it's considered a small order. If we're buying over $100,000, it's considered a regular or large order. And the process we use is somewhat different depending on whether it's a small order or a large order. If it's either way, though, keep in mind it's through competitive bid or a competitive process that we will put out those contracts. If the goods are if the contract is going to be for services, we will go through a process called an RFP, or request for proposal. Or if we need a pool of vendors, we will go through what's called an RFQ, or a request for qualification process. And then finally, for certain construction projects, there's what's called a job order contract program. Now, I'm saving that for last because I'm not going to cover much material on JOC because we have a separate workshop for job order contracting. So if you're interested in job order contracting, there's another workshop, and I can give you information about when and where that workshop is going to take place. Now, very briefly, I discussed small orders, but again, it's for goods under $100,000. There's no formal bid specification or public advertisement required. We can get quotes by telephone, fax, or written quotation, or by posting our solicitation on our website. The City of Chicago certified MBE, WBE vendors are solicited first. Keep in mind, MBE stands for Minority Business Enterprise, WBE stands for Women-Owned Business Enterprise. And then finally, MBE, WBE compliance is required for bids over $10,000. For over $100,000, large orders or regular orders, you might call them, we advertise in the Sun-Times newspaper. We advertise Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in the classified section. We also post on cityofchicago.org on our procurement webpage. And you can pick up opportunities in the bid and bond room here at City Hall as well, hard copy issued advertisements of our opportunities. Well, it's not loading up, but I can still tell you that pre-bid conferences oftentimes take place for competitively bid contracts. So pre-bid conferences are the opportunity for vendors to come in after they've read a specification or a solicitation and basically ask questions about the project, get answers to certain questions, get clarification if the specifications perhaps are a little vague to any individual vendor or to the group of vendors. Pre-bid conferences are not required. So if there's not a pre-bid conference, you can always review a specification and submit questions and get answers, possibly clarifications, possibly addenda, by way of submitting your questions to the Department of Procurement Services if we're not having a pre-bid conference. And so, as I said, at the pre-bid conference, there's a review of specifications. We address concerns regarding specifications. There's question and answer session. Bidder attendance is encouraged but not required. And any questions that will come in through the bid conference may result in clarifications being issued, or maybe an addenda where we advertise an adjustment or a modification to the specification. When you see an opportunity, whether it's advertised in the paper, whether it is from a handout through the bid and bond room, when you see an opportunity, what you're going to see is the very broad information about what the project is about. But what you are going to need to get is the specifications, which you will pick up. You'll read through, and the specifications will tell you exactly what we want, the way we want it. I encourage you to read every detail of specifications that you pick up very carefully, because you literally have to make sure that you give us everything we're asking for. Otherwise, there is a risk your bid can be rejected. So, for example, we have fill in all the required information. If there are blanks with information being required throughout a specification, wherever it says, for example, you must provide the following information, and there are blanks, don't fail to provide that information. Do not omit that information, because that could be a basis. Your failure to provide required information could be a basis for us rejecting your bid. Also, certain bid documents must be submitted and executed with the bid. If not, the bid could be rejected. Well, for example, if certain opportunities require you to have subcontractors that are certified as MBE or WB participate, there's certain paperwork you have to file with your bid to show who those subcontractors are. And if you fail to include those, what we call schedules, with your bid, that could be a basis for rejecting your bid, and you lose out on the opportunity. Also, anywhere you're required to sign, you have to sign. It shows your commitment to your bid. Also, your signature should be notarized. Make sure whatever is required in the specification is completed, so that you don't spend all your time, effort, resources preparing a bid doing your research just to find that your bid is rejected because you missed one technicality. You don't want that to be the reason why your bid is rejected. For bid submittal, include any bid deposit in the proper form. The solicitation will say if a bid deposit is required and how much. They're usually 5% of the bid. There might be a bid fee for larger projects over $100,000. And very important, keep in mind bids are due at 11 o'clock. When you drop them off in the bid and bond room, they are due at 11 o'clock. And then at that time, there is bid opening. Late bids will not be received. Okay, we're not required to receive late bids. At the bid opening, which is Monday through Friday except for holidays at 11 a.m. And keep in mind it's here at City Hall, 3rd floor, bid and bond room, room 301. Bids are open. They're literally read aloud, so it's literally a bid opening. Bids are tabulated. We calculate what the bids are, and they're reviewed for accuracy and completeness, and we tabulate the bids, or basically itemize them, and within 24 hours they'll be posted on the city's website. So you can see what bids came in. If you compete, keep in mind it's closed bid when they're submitted, but after the bid opening, you'll be able to see what all the bids are when we tabulate the bids. Very quickly, the award process. After the bid, once we've determined the lowest responsible bidder, a determination is made regarding the responsiveness and responsibility. The department who's the client, remember I said like fire department might be a client, police department might be a client, they will issue a recommendation of award after receiving information about the bids. The bid and contract documents are routed through signature approval process. If there are performance and payment bonds that are required, we're going to make sure that those are part of the contract package. And funding agency concurrence if it's being funded, if it's a funded project that is not city funded. Also, contract award to the lowest responsible bidder that meets the specifications. That's basically the final stage of the process. When we have made sure all the documents are together, that we're giving it to the lowest responsible bidder, we go through that signature process. Once the contract's signed, we can award it to the lowest responsible bidder. Now, what if we are trying to purchase professional services? Keep in mind, professional services are services that are of a highly skilled nature. And why is it different? Why does the law allow us to treat professional services slightly different as far as how we put a contract in place? It is because, unlike commodities, where once we know we have a certain type of good being sold by a number of vendors, we just want to get it at the lowest price. Unlike that situation, with professional services, we have to balance the desire to get some services at a low cost with the desire to have high quality or good quality, acceptable quality services. So the RFP process allows the city to conduct sort of a balancing act of trying to get the best price with the best quality, and in turn getting the best value, would be a fair way to put it. And so it's a little bit more of a evaluation process of the professional service providers when we go through the RFP process. And it's not uploading, but what I can describe the RFP process for you so you get an understanding. How many folks in the audience provide services? Okay, so more than half. So this should be very useful to the majority of the audience. Keep in mind, you might be selling goods right now, but in the future you might also provide some type of services. So it might be useful to know not only about competitive bidding, but about the RFP process, even if you're not currently providing services. So here's how it works. The client department, let's say Department of Information Technology, has a need. Maybe that need is software development and installation. They will draft up specifications. Those specifications will be provided to the Department of Procurement Services, and we will advertise. The advertisement requirements we follow are the same as they are for goods. So you'll see them in the Sun-Times, you'll see them on our procurement webpage. So the advertising is the same. I mention that because if you're looking for opportunities, you're going to look in the same places. You're going to look in the Sun-Times, you're going to look on the DPS webpage, bid and bond room for these opportunities, whether they are for goods or whether they are for services. Now, when we advertise, we are going to solicit responses from vendors, but instead of your lowest bid, like we're asking for goods, we're going to be asking for your proposal. And what it is it's going to be a request for your written proposal, proposing or trying to persuade us why you are the best vendor to perform a project, why you're going to have the best price and provide the best services and therefore give us the best value to allow us to get our professional services. We will receive your proposal and we will evaluate your proposal. We will evaluate it for responsiveness, responsibility, but we will also form oftentimes evaluation committees made up of members of city departments, and those evaluation committees are going to evaluate the proposal. They may bring the vendor in for oral presentation. You might have to actually present information in support of your written proposal to try and persuade the evaluation committee why you're the best suited for this project. And at the end of the day, you'll be evaluated, scored. There will be a recommendation from the department that is going to be your client. And if you are successful at proposing that you are the best vendor to provide a professional service, then you will get an agreement with the City of Chicago to provide those services. Now, if you get a contract as a result of an RFP, most likely you will be the one vendor providing those services. However, there are situations where the city needs to have a pool of vendors. And in that case, what we do is we put out what's called a request for qualifications, RFQ. RFQ starts the same way. A department like the Department of Information Technology drafts specifications. They send it to the Department of Procurement Services. We advertise the opportunity. You see the opportunity in the paper or on the website or down in the bid and bond room. You will submit a response, but instead of a proposal, you will submit your qualifications. Now, your qualifications, I don't want to say it's like a resume exactly, but it's kind of like submitting your resume. And it's basically saying, here's why I'm qualified to perform this project or this scope of work that you've advertised as an opportunity. Now, when you submit your qualifications, you will go through the same evaluation process. We will evaluate you based on your qualifications. And if you are successful, you will be qualified into a pool of vendors. And once you're in that pool of vendors, you will be eligible to receive work going forward within the scope of that opportunity. You won't know right away exactly what work you're going to do, but you're going to know the general scope of work that you would be in the pool for. When opportunities come up, the opportunities will be presented to the pool, and if work is going to a specific vendor within that pool, the vendor will sign a task order. And a task order is basically a contract within their pool contract or their master consulting agreement. So you'll basically find out what your work is, you'll enter into a task order, perform that task order, and when the task order is done, you go back into the pool. And then you might get another task order down the line. So you're there for those opportunities when they come up. That's why it's a great situation to be involved or successful in an RFQ process, because at least you're in the pool there to get that business when it comes along. Yes, sir.
Food service industry part of that pool?
It could be. Keep in mind, services can be divided into two general categories: work services and professional services. Professional services are considered highly skilled. Work services, while also extremely valuable to us, are not really considered professional in nature. There are minimum qualifications for it, but they're a little more common than professional services. For example, security guards are extremely valuable to the City of Chicago. We put those out through through work service contracts. While they're extremely valuable to us, they're not considered of the professional nature that is eligible for the RFP process. So we put, as long as you meet licensing requirements, that your security guards pass background checks, and there's those minimal qualifications, then you could be eligible to competitively bid for work service contracts. So to answer your question in a long way, for food service, it's highly likely that as long as you have the certifications for food delivery, for licensing for whatever facility you use to prepare the food, at a certain point, it probably is going to be a work service because it would not be treated like a professional service the way, for example, accounting might be, or information technology. So it would be more of a work service. Okay. Now, I mentioned job order contracting briefly. What it is JOC is a firm, fixed price, competitively bid, indefinite quantity contract specifically designed for each department's construction program. It is typically for medium-sized projects, and instead of bidding everything smaller, medium-sized, we go through what's called a JOC program. General contractors are solicited to respond to an advertised JOC specification, and it contains pricing that is based off of a price book. Now, the award is competitive, but basically the JOC project allows us to award contracts on a discount off the price book. So it's competitive in nature, but it's slightly different than our typically competitively bid contracts. I'm not going to go into too much detail because normally the majority of the audience provides services but not construction, and we also have a workshop for the JOC contracting program. So I recommend that if you have interest in JOC contracting, that you stick around, and I'll be glad to let you know a little bit about where and when you can participate in the JOC workshop. Certification. There was a session right before this workshop regarding certification, so I'm not going to go over all the information that was provided during that session. But I want to just point out for those that were not there, there are certification types or categories that are allowed for historically disadvantaged groups, and if you are eligible to be certified in one of the areas, it can be an opportunity for you to gain participation or preferential treatment to participate on certain contracts as a subcontractor, perhaps as a prime contractor. Quickly, those certifications are MBE, Minority-Owned Business Enterprises, WBE, Women-Owned Business Enterprises, BEPD, Business Enterprises Owned by Individuals with Disabilities, DBE, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, and ACDBE, Airport Concession Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. For the most part, eligibility means that you are part of a historically disadvantaged group and that you are 51% owner of the business entity that you're operating. Under the BEPD program, the business must be owned 51% or controlled by an individual with a disability. And keep in mind, if you are certified by Cook County, the City of Chicago accepts Cook County certification. So we have a reciprocal certification with Cook County. Now, we take our certification and our compliance very seriously. We want to assist the vendor community, the historically disadvantaged vendor community, in being able to participate on an equal playing field. In order to do so, we want to make sure that we get full participation by anyone that is eligible and certified. Ways to achieve participation or compliance: you can be a prime and get participation credits as an MBE, WBE, or DBE. You can be a joint venture with MBEs, WBEs, or DBEs. You can participate as a subcontractor or have MBEs, WBEs, and DBEs participate in a subcontracting relationship with you if you're a prime contractor. Also, you can purchase materials that are used in the performance of the contract from MBEs, WBEs, and DBEs. And just for clarification, I want to make clear so that when you do your research, hopefully do some research when you go home, MBE, WBE certification is local certification or city certification. DBE is very similar, but it is the federal certification of minority-owned business enterprises and women-owned business enterprises. So, for example, if there's federal funding involved in a project, DBE would be applicable. Whereas if it's city-funded, MBE, WBE would be the certification that's applicable. If you are doing work related to the airport, ACDBE might be applicable. Airport Concession Disadvantaged Business Enterprise might be applicable. So keep in mind on how the project's funded and where the work's being performed, what type of project, all those play a role in what type of certification may be relevant, both if you have the certification and you want to participate, or if you're a prime contractor and you want to use certified firms, then you want to make sure you're using the right type of certified firm to participate. Now, as far as using certified firms, primes, we monitor this. Prime contractors are required to submit subcontractor payment certification forms, weekly certified payrolls, and waivers of lien. We do monitor that information. And keep in mind there are other reporting requirements, just even beyond certification issues. And that is one of the reasons why we have a guest today. Rachel Levin is from the Office of the Inspector General. She is here to speak with you, have an opportunity for you to speak with her as well today. But one of the things we take very seriously at the city, at the Department of Procurement Services, is what's called the duty to report corrupt or unlawful activity. It is an obligation on vendors, not only on vendors, but on city employees. But I want you to be aware of it because according to Municipal Code 2156018, there is a duty upon vendors, placed upon vendors, to report corrupt or unlawful activity. Now, I gave you a handout on this issue, and the reason I did that is because I don't know that I could even read that this close, and so I have a feeling you might not be able to read it from the audience. But I want you to be able to see word for word what your obligations are as a vendor when you do work with, when you do business with the City of Chicago. So you have the handout, and in that handout, I've included Municipal Code Section 2-156-018, and the first part discusses the obligations for every city employee and official about reporting obligations. The second section in the ordinance talks about the contractor obligation, and if you read it there, it says every city contractor shall report directly and without undue delay to the city's Inspector General any and all information concerning conduct by any person which such contractor knows to involve corrupt activity. A city contractor's knowing failure to report corrupt activity as required in this section, and in the ordinance it's Section B, and you can see that on your paper, shall constitute an event of default under your contract. So your failure to report can actually be something where we can rely on that to terminate your contract. So if you fail to do this, if you fail to report where you're obligated to do so, it's considered an event of default. Event of default is like a breach of contract. And what we then can do is we can address the issue in many ways. There are many legal remedies. One of them might be contract termination. So I want to point this out because you do want to abide by your obligations as a vendor. The ordinance goes on to say that the Section B, corrupt activity, shall mean any conduct set forth in subparagraph A1, A2, or A3 of Section 123020 of the Chicago Municipal Code. Now, what I've included, not here on this page, because I ran out of room, but in your handouts is I included 123020, and I encourage you today, but definitely, if not in the room now, when you have a chance, when you leave today, what you want to do is you want to make sure you're familiar with what corrupt activity is. And the municipal code defines what corrupt activity is. So you should read that section, which is in your packet. The third page of your packet, I've included 122010, and that talks about what is knowing. And sometimes your knowledge, what triggers corruption, but not only that, what triggers your required report can hinge on knowledge or knowing. And so you also want to look at the definition, how the municipal code defines knowing. And I encourage you to do that as well. The last page of the handout that I gave you is a sample of a contract provision. We incorporate that contract provision into our contracts, and it becomes binding upon you when you do business with us. And basically what that last page is a sample of the provision, and it summarizes this obligation. But it not only summarizes this obligation, it binds you, not only by law. So if you fail to report, you're violating the municipal code, but you're also, because you're signing off on that contract that has the provision that we include, you're going to violate our contract if you fail to comply with this ordinance. So there are two concerns that you would have by failing to report. So please keep in mind your duty to report corrupt or unlawful activity, and also be aware of the consequences, because they are significant, if not severe. So having said that, I will welcome our guest speaker.
So I think I'm here to kind of lighten that whole statement a little bit. You know, I think this DPS takes this the duty to report and the municipal code very seriously, and as it relates to city vendors as well. I just want to, you know, I'm here as the representative of the Inspector General's office to show you that, you know, we are city employees as well. We're a 50-something staff office, and we are in charge of investigating wrongdoing within the city, but we also do audits and reviews of city programs. We promote economy, efficiency, effectiveness, and integrity of the city of Chicago. And we see you all as partners in doing this, because if we don't know that something is going on, we can't address it. And especially in terms of people who do work with the city, we want you to have an even playing field. A lot of these laws and provisions and all of the procedures you go through are about making sure that you as a business have a chance to play in the system. And again, if you see something wrong, it might be wrong in one case, it might be a larger story going on that you don't even know about. And so it's very important to us and to the city that you let us know what's going on. And just because you make a complaint, just because you call the office and say, you know, I think this might be wrong, I'm not sure if it applies, that doesn't mean that that person is in trouble. There's an investigation that may be opened, and if the investigation is not sustained, which many are not, then it does not become public. And so that person they won't be put out in the public as having been investigated. That company won't be put out in the public as having been investigated. So it's a very confidential system, and we are really out there just to make sure that everyone has a chance to play by the rules and to play fairly. I have brought a copy of our mission, some of the reports that we put out. In particular, we have a quarterly report that we publish with summaries of the investigations that have been sustained. You can find information in there about, you know, we'll summarize a contractor breached this rule and this was the consequence. We won't say the contractor's name, but that's a good way to kind of learn about, you know, what might apply and what might be right, what might be wrong. So you can pick that up, and also it has the information for how to report. You can do that online, you can do that by phone, and again, just because you call something in, that doesn't necessarily mean that that person is going to be in trouble unless, or that company is going to be in trouble unless they've done something wrong. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I did not load that. what I want to do, as soon as this is over, I want to point out and emphasize how useful Department of Procurement Services website can be. Our department, the staff members, our IT staff, Department of Information Technology, there's a lot of effort that goes into providing as much of a resource or as full of a resource as we can about the procurement process and about opportunities. And we try to put as much as we can into our website. The information you can find on our webpage includes awarded contracts and modifications, payment information, bid tabulations, as I said earlier, weekly bid opportunities, new certification initiative information. We have a searchable M and WBE directory, and all this information can be found at cityofchicago.org/procurement. If you go to cityofchicago.org, you can, on our web page, right up towards the top, there are icons, and one of the icons is awarded contracts. If you click on that, it'll take you to a second page that'll allow you to, as it says, get started online. And if you click that, it'll open up this, I want to call it search engine, or this database. And there are many things you can do with it. One is you can find information about vendors that are currently doing business with the city. You can search for not only current contracts, but past contracts. You can also find out payments that have been made to prime contractors that have been doing business with the city of Chicago. And the list goes on. There's quite a bit of information. So I encourage you to go to cityofchicago.org, go to our webpage, go to this database, and look around. There are a lot of benefits that can be gained by just wandering around our database, wandering around our website, and gathering information. This gives you an idea. If you go through the database and you click on contracts and awards, this is the type of information you can search by. You don't even have to have all the information. You might have just the vendor name, or you might have just a contract specification number, or you might have a purchase order number. So even with a little bit of information, you can get a lot out of our database and out of our website. Once you find a contract you're interested in, you can see that there are links, active links, that will allow you to do things like pull up a scanned copy of an old contract. When you do business with the City of Chicago, you have to complete what's called an economic disclosure statement. You can open up information about vendors and see their economic disclosure statement. You can find out contact information for the vendors that are on contract by clicking on the vendor name. Why do I mention this helpful information to you? Well, there are many ways to go about getting your foot in the door or getting involved in city business. Maybe you're just going to look for the opportunities as a prime contractor, look for the ads in the paper, and maybe you're just going to bid outright on projects and try and be a prime contractor right away. Maybe you feel like you can grow or learn by getting started as a subcontractor. Well, it'd be interesting to know what contracts are out there for the work you do. You can find them here. You might be interested in who the contractors are that are the prime contractors on that work. Maybe you can contact them. Maybe you can network with them. Make yourself known to them if you're a certified firm. They might be looking for you and they haven't found you yet. You might have a certification that makes you valuable to them as an MBE or WB. Maybe you can help them meet compliance. So it's a good idea to get to know who else is participating or doing business with the city. This is another page. It's just if you find a vendor and you can see not only the current contract for a certain type of work, you can see a vendor's past contracts on work or on related work. And then finally, this is the portal where you can search by vendor and see invoices, when payments were made to them, how much payments were, so you can get an idea of payments made to City of Chicago vendors on certain contracts. This is where you can look up bid tabulations. I mentioned earlier when there's a bid opening, say you bid competitively and We do our bid opening at 11 o'clock after the due date. And remember I said, well, it's closed bid when it occurs, but when it's read aloud, we tabulate the bids. Well, you can see what all the other bidders had put in by seeing what the bid tabulations are. Again, they're posted within 24 hours. You may be interested in going back to old bid tabulations to see if a contract for certain goods or services existed a while back. Maybe it's going to come to an end. There's an opportunity being presented for the same thing over again. Maybe you want to go back and see what vendors bid the last time around. You can look at their bid tabulations and see, obviously adjusting for time and changes in costs, maybe the current environment for supplies. You might have to adjust, but you can get an idea and do some research on how you might want to bid presently. And that concludes doing business with the City of Chicago. I want to, again, thank you on behalf of Mayor Rahm Emanuel, on behalf of Chief Procurement Officer Commissioner Jamie Rhee. I want to thank you for attending, putting in the time to learn more about doing business with the city. I want to thank Rachel Levin for taking the time to be here for you as well. And if you have any questions, I'm going to stick around. I'll be glad to answer them for you. You have my contact information. I will either assist you if I can, or I'll find a resource that can assist you if you need us in the future. Thank you and have a great day.